Allison to go ahead and hit record. Thank you. And we'll just get started. So thank you for being here today. We are going to be talking about intelligent agents and Brightspace and how we're envisioning using them to support student success. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing in relationship to the Title III grant, and then David's going to show you in action what this looks like using work that he's done with Jose on the Compass program, on the SKW program. I first want to bring your attention to an article that I dropped in the chat, and that article, let me get the name of it, is Instructor Use of Academic Alerts and Its Impact on Student Outcomes, Controlling for Selection Bias. There was a lot in this article that I think was relevant. It was also, I think, a little bit much because it really was talking about it from the perspective of a bigger institution. But I pulled out some highlights that I think are relevant to today's conversation and the direction I'm hoping we're going to be going in terms of supporting student success and what we think the roles of our learning management system in relationship to Navigate 360 are. So the first thing I want to point out is that the article demonstrated that those faculty members who used the early alerts saw a lower withdrawal rate in their courses. They were reporting about 30% of the students who 30% of the courses that use these early alert systems saw about 30% fewer students withdrawing, and that there were higher average course grades overall. And then they also reported that the students were more likely to earn a C or above. So higher course grades overall, more likely to pass the class, and fewer students withdrawing. So that's an important thing to note, and something that I also indicated in the Title III grant when we wrote it is that one of the target goals was to address the DWF rate as part of our retention strategy. The thing that the findings also indicated that early intervention is critical. The more we are engaged with the students earlier, providing feedback, providing those support systems, the better. So you don't want to wait until midterm to offer an exam or feedback, because at that point you've lost the student, right? So the idea behind these early alerts is to put some kind of an assessment, some kind of way to integrate and have an exchange with your student up front so that you can monitor their progress going forward. The other thing that this article noted is that the frequency of those alerts was important. So it's not just the timing, it's not just getting it early enough, it's having it often enough. And so we have to be strategic about where we put those alerts and those interventions in our courses. Something that seems like, well, of course, but it did come out as part of the findings, is that faculty-driven engagement matters with students. And this happened to be a bigger institution. So that faculty engagement probably was a little bit more novel of an idea than it is for us at Carlow, because that's part of our mission, is to be student-centered. But they reported out that the higher the faculty engagement was, the more they saw improvement in student performance, and that those alerts correlated with a sense of belonging and just a sense, an overall sense of general well-being for the students. Some of the potential challenges, and this won't surprise anybody, but not all of our students will they won't necessarily act on those alerts. So it's critical to follow up. So after you put out an alert, you get everybody engaged, follow up with the student. And the effectiveness is also contingent upon how the quality of the feedback. You know, I was surprised after all the years that I spent learning the methods of teaching, I hadn't considered the quality of feedback as a skill set. And I just want to throw it out to everybody that we are members of the Online Learning Consortia, and there is a workshop. It's not very expensive. I think it's like $150 for members that talks about how to provide good quality feedback to your students. I highly recommend that. If you're interested, let me know. Because that is a skill set. I am actually using I'm doing a lot of work with ChatGPT to craft my feedback because I want to make sure that it's thoughtful and that it's supportive and helpful. And sometimes I think it's supportive and helpful, and a student might hear it in a completely different way. So having chat to kind of test that out on is helpful. So if you ever want to know how to do that or work with me on doing that, I'm happy to help you. Finally, again, that training that we all need. I just mentioned about the feedback training, but it's also in knowing how to create those alerts in Brightspace, or even if you're not using Brightspace, how do you monitor your student progress? So faculty training is critical. And I just want to end by saying that when I wrote the Title III grant, I had this vision in my mind that we could look at the thing that I was tasked with is that the DWF rates in our skills classes were really where the faculty, where the administration wanted me to focus on. And so I pulled that into the grant proposal and I looked to see how we could do that. And I said, well, if we incentivize the faculty to use a universal design for learning approach, and in particular, I was thinking about SKW and SKQ, and we create a master class that you could use to create consistency across all the sections that we're teaching. Then you could build in intelligent agents that would indicate when we would need to be putting in some kind of an interaction, a student support, a connection, whatever, and then use EAB Navigate 360 to monitor those communications between the faculty, the faculty who's teaching the class, the faculty advisor, any support folks that are engaged, and the student, obviously. So that's the best practice approach that I'm kind of hoping that we can continue to move forward on. David's going to show you what that looks like in practice. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so he can do that. And I know he's talked about intelligent agents before, but if you don't see it, it might just sound like blah, 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 blah. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of an understanding of where we want to go with this. I'm concerned right now because of the Title III grant situation and where we are with the federal government in general. So I am putting some things on hold until I know. The work is continuing. The things that I have to put on hold are, am I going to be able to pay stipends out to faculty to participate in this? I would hope that it is important enough work that I could engage a pilot group of faculty, even if I wasn't giving them a stipend to work with us on doing this. But we are where we are, and it is what it is. So I'm going to just post that up as a big question mark and a placeholder until further notice. And then I'm going to turn it over to David to share what he's experiencing, and Jose can chime in with his thoughts as well. So thank you. Go ahead, David.
Hi. So what I'm sharing right here is the text from an email that I got from Jose when we were starting to set this up, when we were looking at the feedback in the CTC courses. And basically what we were looking at was what types of feedback from intelligent agents would have the biggest impact, while also being mindful that if we flood someone with messages and notifications, they're going to lose value. They're going to start ignoring them, just like you would if I flooded you with, 30 emails a day about something, you would just start deleting them. So what we focused on were these two categories here. The 0 on a major assignment. So he identified, these specific assignments are very important. They have to turn these in. And so if they get a 0 on one of these assignments, they should get the message that is shown here. And another thing that seemed important is this is a writing related course. And so the thought was if the instructor has typed up feedback and given it to the student on the work, we wanted to notify the student that there was feedback available and that they should log in and take a look at it. Some students might have missed that type of feedback because they might have just glanced at their grade, said, okay, fine, that's adequate, and just, moved on without looking at that feedback. So we wanted to make sure they got a chance to see that before moving on to their next assignment and not incorporating those revisions. And then Jose also added here some information about where they could go if they wanted to meet with a writing tutor and get some assistance with their writing to do better on their next assignment. So these were the two areas we focused on. We thought these would be the highest impact areas in this particular course. That is not necessarily the case for every course because, okay, let me move that. This bar in Teams is in my way. Okay. So here we are, we're in a sandbox course so that we don't mess up Jose's active course and upset his students with some new intelligent agents. But we have here the intelligent agent page. And the way I got here was just by going to more options and intelligent agents. And this brings me to the page right here. And so I have a few different options on this page. If I have a course with many assignments and I'm going to set these up, I might want to start putting things into categories, and that is what this button here is for. I might want to create an assignment category just so that this page is less cluttered. It's not required though, you don't have to do that. What we do need to do is go to new agent. I'm going to call this one major assignment. I can put this into my category since I created one. And then if I want this to work, I do need to enable my agent, otherwise it won't do anything. And so then here I've got scheduling. And what we decided on is we wanted to notify people of these things, but we didn't want to keep notifying them over and over again of the same thing that they had already been told. And so we did choose to run these once. So the scheduled date, this was important to us with the assignment category because on the first day of class, you might have a number of students who haven't done something yet. And so we wanted to not flood them with notifications of all the incomplete work on the first day of the semester. We wanted to start this later when they were going to start doing work. And there are two ways that we can accomplish this. One is we could just pick a start date for the announcement. So we could tell it to start notifying people after a certain date. Or in our case, because Jose limited this to a 0 on a major assignment, the instructor has to actively add a 0 for this to be triggered. And that delayed the sending of this announcement until that 0 had been entered. And so that was the way we decided upon to send this at the appropriate time, because we don't want the student to suddenly get a bunch of emails on the first day of class that they haven't done something and then not be reminded at the appropriate time. And so if we look down here on the criteria, We'll make this for students. On the release condition, the one that we chose was under assignments, and then it was score. Yeah, it was the score on the rubric. But you could also use this one, the no submission to a folder. And the difference between these is with the score, this is dependent on getting a specific score that we're going to enter. And with this no submission to a folder, this would be they just didn't do it. We could do this one. We could do the no submission to a folder. But if we do this, we need to set up a date of when we want this to start running. You know, when is it that they should have submitted this to a folder? And then it will send it after that date. In this case, we chose score on associated rubric, or since I don't have a rubric in here, let's use score on associated outcome. Maybe we won't use that one. All right, so if we decide to use...
Can I pose a question for you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Here? Because now I'm wondering if things are working right, because so then for my course, when students don't submit a major assignment, I don't necessarily like zero out the rubric. I'll sometimes just enter the 0 manually and have it go. And now I'm wondering, is that triggering the intelligent agent or not? And is there some instruction I should give our instructors about how to enter the 0 so it doesn't trigger the intelligent agent? I didn't realize that specific.
Let me take a look at what we did and see if I'm correctly remembering what we did do. And if so, we can take a look at that.
Okay, not that you have to go there right now. I was realizing I need to be able to clarify exactly what that setting is so that I know I'm doing it right and everyone else is.
So let's take a look at this agent and see. It does look like no one has been flagged in this course. So let's take a look about that.
Right, like in my course, I know I've entered zeros. Well, that's a 101 course. We only have one section of 101, I think.
Okay, so let's find a different course then.
Yeah.
Which section should we look at?
Well, I know I put zeros in, so you can look at my section, which is the honors section. I think it might be that DA section right there. Oh no, that's a 101. Sorry, that's another 101. Sorry, but if you choose, I don't know if the honors section is. I think it's a 102 DA section. So I can check this on myself to see if those things have been sent out.
Sure. In this case, it has not identified users. So let's take a look at how we set this up, and then we'll look at the grade. Well, I guess we shouldn't look at the grade book on the screen, but we can take a look at that later and see if there are specific people it should have.
Yeah, I just kind of know that there should. I think there were 2 people that should have been alerted.
All right, and so what we did was receives less than or equal to 0% on the grade item. So we did not tie this to a rubric.
Okay. So if I just entered 0, it should have triggered it?
I would think. So we can take a look later when we're not on the
sorry,
screen.
You're doing this presentation. Sorry, I'm making you do my work. Don't
no, this is interesting to look at. We can take a look though later on and see which students should have been flagged and then why they weren't. And if it's because of how this was set up, we can go set it up differently. And that would be an interesting thing to take a look at. So we will definitely maybe schedule a time to look at this and see how the 0 was entered and whether it matches what we put here. And if it doesn't, then we can change how this is set up to match the way the zeros are going in. Because I do see that we don't currently have any notifications that were set out. So if you do have a couple of zeros, then Yeah, it doesn't have any on there. So that is interesting. Let's see if there's a log. View history. Yeah, it hasn't identified anyone on this agent all semester. So if they did get a 0 on a major assignment, now this one wasn't flagged to every assignment. It was just specific ones. So we'd need to take a look if it was one of the assignments that is flagged here. And if so, we can look at why it didn't flag them. So that would definitely be interesting to take a look at. So back to our sandbox course, so I don't suddenly send notifications to Jose's students. We do have a variety of options here. If you want to avoid the questions about having to enter zeros, you can use this no submission to a folder. The catch with this being that we would need to put a date on this agent. And we would need to break these out separately so that we have a separate date for every notification that we're about to send out. So this would be a different way of setting it up than what we did, but it is possible that this would have been a better method because then it wouldn't be dependent on how the zeros were typed in. So in this case, let's do it this way. I have this flag right here for this particular paper. I can create additional release conditions for the same agent if they're all going to run based on something that isn't the date, but I can also break them out. In this case, since I'm going to base it on the date, I'm not going to add any more assignments to this condition. And then right here, I take a look at the actions and I tell it what I would like it to do when this agent's criteria are satisfied. So in this case, I only want it to take action once because I have one paper here, and I just want to tell them one time that, hey, you didn't do this and you should have. I do not want this, and I don't think you have this on your list of permissions anyway, but I do want to use this send an email. And if you have, going back a second, if you have questions about this repetition setting, there's a number of blue links here in the page that we're looking at where a help document will pop up and give you some additional information. So for example, if you're not sure how often you want this to run, you can click that link and it will tell you what those things mean. Or in this case, I'm sending an email. I might want to learn how to change the settings. And so it's telling me how I can do some of these things. The email that any notification will come from is going to be this no reply at celticonline.brightspace.com. That's an institution-wide setting, and the reason we chose that is that the original default setting in Brightspace, students were trying to respond to it, and students cannot respond to these emails because they're a no reply address. So our hope was that by changing it to no reply as the username, that students would get a heads up that they cannot just hit reply on this and get an answer. They need to reach out to their instructor. So in this case, I have this to field, and I have a link here that gives me special email addresses. What these are is strings. So instead of having to type every student's email or every student's name into this box, I can just use a string. And what makes this a string are these little curly brackets that they put on the ends here. So it's very important to include those, copy this, because if we leave those off, it's just going to tell me that initiating user doesn't exist. So I'm going to paste initiating user there, and the initiating user is the student. So the student is the one getting the email, and what it will do is it'll look at your class list, see what student it is, and it will send them an email based on what their name is in the system. If you want to CC someone, like for example yourself, to get a copy of when this goes out, you can. So I'll do that here. And if you want If there's a situation where you want to CC an advisor, you do have that ability, although you might want to talk to them first before sending them a bunch of emails to make sure they want that information. So now I have it set up to send an email to the student and to copy me on the email. And I can give this a subject. And I believe in here we use this one because that was the subject we used. And then I can type a message to the student. And again, I can use replace strings. So I don't have to manually type in my student's name or other information about that student. I can use these strings to automate this for myself to make it easier. So I want to include the student's first name. So right here, I've put in hello and the student's first name, the replace string for that. And so it will plug in the first name of the student in this email so that I don't have to type that each time. And there are other strings I can use as well. I can add the date. I can add information about what course this is. If it's an email about why they haven't accessed the course, I can come in here and add the last date the system thinks they accessed the course, or the last day they logged on to the system. And this information would personalize the email, and it will automate all of this. I don't have to look this up and see when they last logged in. It will just look that up for me and send it in the email. So in this case, I'm going to use the text that Jose gave me right here. And I'm just going to paste that right here. Okay, so here I've got text in the email. I have a replace string up here for this student. And now if I want to attach something like the rubric that went with that assignment, I can. I do want to leave the email formatted as HTML because if I choose plain text, this replace string will just become text and the student would get an email that says, hello, initiating user first name. The HTML is what makes this code actually do something. So we want to leave that alone. And now I'm going to save and close. And I can see right here that I have my agent listed here. And let me just check the class list to make sure I know who's going to be emailed. Okay, good. So if I want to, I can run this at any time. So I can come right here with this arrow and I can choose run now, and I can run my intelligent agent right now. And that gear shows me that it is trying to run my intelligent agent. It should be pretty fast because this course only has one student. In your case, it could take a bit longer if there are more students. But then in this box here, I will see the results of my next run, or the last run, and the date that it was last run, and the date that it is scheduled to run automatically. So let's see, it should have just sent me an email, and it did. So it ran, and it tells me it did take action because it did find that a student applied to these criteria. And so here is the email it sent out. It says, hello, the student in this class is Tyler's student. So it included the first name Tyler. It included the text right here. And then the signature that I included in the previous text. So this is what it should send out if it's operating properly. And now that we refresh our page, it should show us the results. So I can see that one user was identified and that this was how long ago. And I can click this and see who that user was and what it did about it. So before talking any more about this, let's see if there were any questions. or if anyone else has experiences with this they want to share, or anything that people would like to add. Okay, it does not look like there are any questions right now, but if that changes, we can answer those. So let's take a look at the other type of agent that we set up in this class previously. All right, so the other type of agent that we set up in Jose's class was one about their attendance. Or I'm sorry, one about their feedback. So we set up one about viewing feedback and whether they had done so. So right here we have viewing feedback. I don't have a category set up for that, so let's add one. And I'm going to enable the agent so that it will run. One thing to note about this enabling button is that when you copy the course, the agent will copy to your next semester, but it will not copy over enabled. So you will have to go in the next semester and click this button to turn it back on. Scheduling. For this one, I'm going to have it run weekly, have it repeat once a week on Friday. I'm going to give it a start date. This assignment is going to be due April, so I'm going to give it a start date after the assignment begins. I'm going to come down here to criteria and turn this on for students. Then right here, I'm going to create a release condition. And on this one, it was that they have received feedback on their submission. So they've received feedback be due to this final paper. And so I'm going to click create. I can add more assignments if I want, as long as the dates would make sense. And then I can click actions. In my case, I only want to do this once. So I want to take action one time and tell them they got feedback, but I don't want to remind them every week that they got feedback one time. So even though this agent is going to run once a week, I'm only going to have it take an action the first time it runs, so they don't get flooded with reminders about the same feedback they already saw. If it's something that you want to be more persistent about, like a 0 on a final paper, then you might choose to take this action every time it's evaluated, so that they get a weekly reminder if they didn't do their final paper. So it just depends on how many emails you feel are appropriate for this particular thing. And then I'm going to send an email for this as well. And I'm going to use the initiating user again. And see, what was the title for this? Viewing feedback. Text. Or whatever name you want to put in there. And then now that we have this all set up the way we wanted it to be, we can go ahead and click Save and Close. And this one, when we click Run Now, I don't think it will find any users because I don't think anyone in this class has received feedback. But if they had, then it would find them and it would send them an email just like it did for this major assignment. And we do have some practice students like this available. So if we want to test something in a course before it goes live, we can help you with that by putting someone in and seeing what happens. Okay, it hasn't found anyone yet for that agent. While it's working, let's take a look at another type of agent that we could do. This one we did not use in the SKW courses, but you could. So if this is something you wanted to do.
Hey David, didn't we actually do something where it was just to kind of make up for the attendance one, that it was just like have you logged into Brightspace in the last 7 days? Did
Let
we
me
do
take
that
a
one?
look and see if we did.
I think
And
you're
if we-
right, Jose. I think that is. I think that's what, because we went back and forth on this.
Right.
Yeah, we
So I
did
think
do
it's
that.
cool
For my
that we can do
SKW.
that.
Not everybody
we-
will work for that, but it works for me because all of the readings are online, so they really do need to be logging in every week on a regular basis. It won't work for everybody's course, of course.
You're right. We did make one of those. And so let's take a look at how that would be set up as well. So we did enable this agent. This one probably doesn't need a category because we should be able to reuse the same agent the whole semester. We don't need a bunch of these. I'm going to run this weekly and repeat it once a week on Friday. I can pick a scheduled time if I want. I can pick a start date so that it begins whenever they were supposed to first log into the class. Probably an end date so it doesn't keep bothering them after the semester ends. So that date. And then I can do users with specific role. I might also want to use student incomplete for this one, just in case I end up with students who need that role when the semester ends for having an incomplete. And then I can come down here. There are two different options. There is login activity. Login activity means they've logged into Brightspace. So they've been in Brightspace. They may not have been in your course, but they've been in the website somewhere. And then there's course activity. And this one means they have not accessed your course. You can put in 7 days. You want to minimize the emails, you could also pad it a little bit and make it say like 10. So that if they're a couple days late logging in, then it doesn't wrap them up in the list. But either way, you can put in here whether or not they've accessed the course. And by clicking this, it should take a look and see, have they not been here? And if so, it will send them a reminder that they should come to class. So then we can create release conditions. In this case, it would be attendance. Actually, I don't think we'll need any release conditions, but we'll come down here to actions. And in this case, I'm going to take action every time the agent is evaluated and the agent's criteria are satisfied. So in other words, if they have not come to class in the past 10 days, I want to notify them every time that that's true, because this could be an ongoing problem that isn't just a one-time thing, like receiving feedback on their final paper. So I'm going to click this button, and then I'm going to choose to send them an email. I'm going to send it again to the initiating user. I'm going to a title. And then I can type up a message about how they need to attend class. So I could put in something like, we could either use a string here, or we could just type in the course. In this case, it'll be the same for everyone, so we'll just type it in. Or I don't know, we could phrase it differently if we wanted to say something else. And if I wanted to be more specific, instead of saying this week, I could use a replace string, and I could say, here is their last course access date. And so then it would substitute the date that they last showed up in the course. All right, so I could do this, and then I could save and close. See if this works. Yeah, we can see for view feedback, it did not find any users because no users in this class have received feedback, which makes sense since the student in question didn't do this particular assignment. So let's run this attendance one and see what's happening with this one. And you can see that it also lists the next time that these will run. In the case of this major assignment, it will not ever run again because this is for one specific assignment and it was told to only do this one time. But in the case of some of these, it will run again because we set it up that way. And let's see, it looks like it just sent me an email. Yep, it did finish running and it took action. In this case, I did not CC myself on the email, but that is okay because I can also see who it emailed right here. And I can see that it sent an email to this student who has not been to class. And here's the text of what it sent the student. So this student has apparently never logged in. And so instead of adding a date, it put in that they had not logged in at all. And we can see what it sent. Are there any questions about how we did this or how you might be able to use this in your course, or how Jose and I set this up in the past, or what we talked about when setting this up? Is anyone considering using this in their class and has questions about how they might do that or how it might benefit them?
If I can just chime in here for a hot minute, one of the things that we've all been talking about is how to be engaged with student retention. And I think that if we know of classes that have high levels of DWF rates, this might be something that we want to use to target helping and supporting students, especially if they're gateway classes, helping and supporting our students. So this is a really cool thing that actually comes with Brightspace. It's just something we have, but it does integrate really, really well with Navigate 360. So if there are people who would be willing to pilot with us on this, we're going to be adopting Navigate 360 sooner than later. So the earlier adopters would be very much appreciated. So I want to give a huge shout out to Jose. Have you noticed any changes in students, anything that you can report back on in terms of outcomes, or do you think it's still too early to know that?
Well, it's a little too early just because that one major assignment setting, which really I have the like smaller assignments, and then at the end of week 5 is when the major assignments come in. I was just looking at one of our faculty members' things, and it looks like it worked pretty well. with the attendance thing well, let me say a few things. I think the kind of thing that we set up for the login to your course, that's really important for teaching an online course. I think that is nice. Um, Typically, when I would enter zeros in the past, I would enter that zero and then email those students who received that zero on a major assignment. But then that's just streamlines that, and I don't have to do that anymore. So it streamlines my work, which I think is great. I was just entering zeros. I was like, oh, I don't have to do that. It's just doing it. The other thing I think that occurred to me, and why I tried to weave some of that into those emails, but I probably could do better, and this is where maybe Navigate 360 comes in, is really just trying to provide students those direct links and supports outside of just me. I think as a faculty member, sometimes I found myself trying to always do everything for the student as
Yeah.
if I am the student's only resource, which of course is too many of those teacher movies that you watch and you think you're the you're the one. And I think it's so important that we provide those other outlets easily for the students. And a lot of times they might not want to speak to me, or they might be embarrassed to speak to me because of something, and then they can just go ahead and contact that tutor, or for the attendance one, it points them to all of those support mechanisms like the counseling services and things like this, so they can do those things outside of having to talk to me. Um, and so anyway, I think those kinds of integrations are great, and we can probably make those richer and better as we get better handle on all these things. And then I was just going to mention to David, as part of my uh, previous thing about my zeros on the major assignment, I was just looking at one of the courses where it did get triggered properly. So whatever that instructor did, then it was triggered properly, and 3 users were identified for getting a zero on their major assignment. So I just have to find out what that. Well, we'll figure it out what that instructor did, because that's the thing we should all be doing, so that gets triggered properly.
Right. We could either do that, or we could rethink how we did it and just have it be the not submitting to the folder by a specific date. And that might be simpler, so that we don't have this confusion going forward. I know that when we talked about this originally, we had wanted to delay the announcement until the student was supposed to have turned it in, and we did it this way. But it might be that a simpler method of just using the date would have worked better, and so we can definitely rethink that and just make an edit for that if we need to change one of them.
Thanks, Dave. That sounds like the perfect solution, and it also removes that entering zeros for some of the instructors, because that's a whole kind of training thing, and I need to kind of have that discussion with instructors of why entering those zeros isn't a mean thing to do, that it actually just keeps them up to date with their grades, at least in my teaching philosophy. There's something that came to my mind, but now I forgot it. So yeah.
While you're thinking of that, I would also just add, for people who might be thinking about this, that you do not need to build these every semester. That once you have done this, they will copy with your course. So all you would need to do is go in there and re-enable them, just turn them back on, maybe change any dates that were in there. You just make a few minor edits, and then they would be ready to use in your future semesters. So the setup process we went through today is really more of a one-time thing. And once you have that set up like you want it, the edits each semester would be a lot faster.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of, just to share, was that I didn't learn this and then figure it out and do it, even though it seems like I should be able to figure it out, but I just don't think my language use isn't the same as people who design these kinds of LMSs. And so then I'm always confused about what does that mean exactly. And so, David really did the work of setting those things up for me. Now, I don't want to say that that's exactly what David's going to do for everybody. At the same time, this is a conversation I had with Caroline for the adjunct training program, was as a faculty member, I often don't know exactly where the boundaries are as far as, hey, Jose, you should be doing that because you're a faculty member, you take care of that. And what are the things that you can ask someone else to do? And so I guess that's just a bigger conversation. It's like I hesitate to ask the instructional designers to do something for me, if that's really not in their whatever, that the things that their responsibilities, because I don't want people doing my work. But at the same time, I need help sometimes because I just don't know how to do it. And sometimes they might just do that thing for me. And I don't know where those boundaries are. So anyway, that's just another kind of conversation.
We
No,
would
I
be
think that's a
happy.
really good point, Jose. Go ahead, David. Did you want to add?
I was just going to add that, like, we're happy to meet and help anyone who needs help walking through something. And it's not so much that we can't go through and set this up for you, but that it's good for you to know how it works and how it operates, because there are points in the semester where our response time is going to be slower than it might be right this minute. In Jose's case, he set these up pretty early, so this was done well before the start of the semester. But for example, if someone reached out the first day of class and said, like, I want you to do this for me, the odds are that it wouldn't happen because we would be buried under other things that day, just as you probably are. So it isn't so much that this
like
isn't
system
our job,
upgrades,
or
David?
it is our job or isn't our job. It's that the timing makes a big difference. That if you can reach out with these things ahead of time, or when it's not like the first or last week of the semester, then we have a lot more time then, and we're much more able to sit down and walk you through it and get it straightened out. Where if it's like Friday at 5, the first week of class, it's really much harder to work that into the week where it's not already filled up.
Yeah, no, the earlier the better, and never hesitate to reach out and ask, because even if we're swamped, we're going to probably tell you, I'm swamped now, but how about we get together later next week or something like that. We will help triage it with you. But yeah, I think this has been so helpful, and I'm so grateful to Jose and to David and to Caroline for all their work on this. I'm anxious about a lot of things with the DOE, but I'm excited about the opportunity to talk to the program officer on Friday and share with him that we have made great progress, and we really hope that whatever is going on with the federal government, one of the things that we don't have to deal with is the loss of this Title III grant, because it has been really so far very, very beneficial to us. So anyway, with that, I know we're coming up to time, but I want to put a plug in for Friday, because we have a learning lab on Friday that will be both faculty and staff focused, but it's on practical applications of ChatGPT for content and editing content, creating and editing content. And Nina and Caroline will be running the show for that. So we encourage everybody to come, share their experiences, hear what Nina and Caroline have been working with the tools, and also to let everybody know that it's not ChatGPT alone. We also have access to Copilot chat with a chat bot that is associated with our Microsoft Office suite. We don't have Copilot, just Copilot chat. So you should get that already, Jessica, but Allison, will you be sending those a reminder out to everybody? Because Allison is the queen of communication here.
There's a reminder on Isadora, and it should have been sent to all faculty and all staff, but it's there on Isadora, or the link is on the CTRL site, and I can drop the link in the chat.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. Okay. Any last minute anythings for the good of the order? Okay. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, David, Jose, Caroline. Thank you all for everything. I appreciate it. And we will see you at the next one, hopefully on Friday.